Hello, welcome to AirBnB Clone MySQL, right? Where we'll be updating our Airbnb console, adding new features. Like we have a lot of features to implement in this our Airbnb Clone MySQL. Trust me, it's a very amazing project. You get to learn a lot of things like how to build logic, how to come up with logic. You're going to learn how to work with relational database, which is MySQL. You're going to learn how to work with SQL alchemy. So it's a very fun and interesting project, and you should do what you should hop right on it immediately. So, just in case you missed the previous video, so just go watch it. We explain a lot of stuff over there. But right here in this particular video, we'll jump straight to what? Improving our console. So the first improvement is what? We have to improve our console to accept parameters. And I really want to teach you guys how ALX does their things and the things you should, pay attention while working on your project. Because I get a lot of complaint from my peers, during my days, and from a lot of students saying, it's working on my machine, but when I get to the checker, it's not working. Yeah, it's normal. What's the reason? The reason is because you fail to pay attention to little details. In ALX, little details are what matters a lot to them. And the other day I was on space with Mr. Julian, and I was like, people was actually complaining. So why they were complaining, and I'm like, sir, is there no fix for that? And he said, nah, there's no fix. We are trying to teach you how we do these things in real world. And that was a valid answer, because in real world organization, manager just gives you a project and never tells you how to go about it. So that's why they tend not to tell you every single thing you need to know about the project. They just give you like little hints. You know what? Go fish it out yourself. And I know it's a lot of problem for most of us. But in this video, we'll be doing it together. So just stay with me and follow the process, and also trust the process. So let's delve straight to updating our console, right? So first off is do create self. This is the function name. So you need to know that everything like that has color, something like this one that has like a color of red. This is red. Is something essential that you should pay attention to. Most likely it's like calling your attention. And it says function of your command interpreter console.py to allow the object creation with given parameters. You need to read what is your requirement. Because if you fail to understand your requirement, you will never get a check in your checker. Trust me. So after that what next? It said command syntax create class name, param1, param2, and so on. And it says the parameter syntax should be key name and a value name. So first off here, you should start thinking of what? Of dictionary. First off, as you've seen key name and value, you should start thinking of dictionary. That's the first thing that should come to your mind. Then after that, you say the string should be a value. Starts with double quotes. That's what you're going to pass in your terminal. And it says any double quote inside the value must be escaped with backslash, or underscores must be replaced by space. Example, you want to set a string my little house to the attribute name. Your command line must be name equal to my little house with an underscore. So you're not allowed to pass multiple of spaces in your terminal, which you actually saw when it triggered an error during our development process, during the first video, sorry, and float and blah blah blah. So you should read this so well and understand every single detail coming from your requirement. Then after that, you should go to this. So this is actually called what? This is actually called output. If you're familiar with solving lit code, you know that output is what? Output is telling you that this is what we expect to get when we are done implementing whatever solution you want to implement. So regardless of how accurate your solution is, if it does not match the required output, you are wrong, brother. And that's how ALX verifies us. And you should pay attention to little details over here. So one attention I can point out to you that I'm very sure you are not aware of is over here. Look at what happened here. They passed what? They passed a key and a value, which is my little house, with a double underscore. With an underscore over here. But watch what I wanted to show you. In the file storage, which is the JSON, in this your file storage over here, look what happened. This is my little house. There is no what? There is no underscore over here. This is very little that you won't even notice it. And when you are done implementing your solution, you'll be like, bro, everything is working. The file storage is accurate. I can see every single data in the file storage, but it's not checking on the internet. Or you forgot that they added this underscore over here, they removed it while they persisted it inside of the database. You see what I needed to point out to you? So make sure you read all of this before implementing your solution. It's very, very essential. So now understanding this this whole requirement, let's delve straight to business. So we know that we need to improve or update our console to accept parameters in the create command, basically. So let's delve straight to our console. So right now, let's see the limitations that the create command has, right? So we do console create and we do create base model, and perfect, it works. So let's check our file, the JSON, and over here we have also it works 6E, and this is 6E, perfect. So what are the requirements? So they need us to update it to accept parameters. Right now we can't accept parameters, and the parameters should be key, name, and value. So what it expects us is that when we do this, so they need us to do something like this: create base model, let me say name is equal to CS3, right? So this is the improvement that they want us to add to our a new feature that they want us to add to our console, right? So we could do name, and we could say something like age is equal to like 10. You get what I'm saying? So this is the new feature, maybe gender is equal to what? Is equal to male, right? So this is the new feature that they want us to implement. So for it to accept parameters. So this should be this should be the attribute, and this should be this should be the value. So right now, if I hit enter, it says class doesn't exist. Why? Because our last console, we stopped the feature, or we stopped the console just by receiving a name of the model that we want to create. Right, so we could go to the console and see it over here. So this is just what we did. If the class name exists, we just created the object basically, and persisted it by calling storage.save into the file storage. But right now we want to accept parameters. It makes sense. You now understand what we need to do in this create command. Right? So right now, I need us to get to work. We need to start thinking. How can we implement this feature? I'm gonna be honest with you. This project is actually one of the best projects I did in ALX. I don't know why, but because the project actually this project made me think outside of the box. Like there was a lot of logic that you had to come up yourself and implement. So what's the first thing you need to put into consideration over here in this particular project? The first thing to put into consideration is, first of all, is I need parameters. So if I get the parameters, how can I now determine that this is the key, and this is the value, or this is the name and this is the value? Because obviously that's what you'll be implemented. That's what you'll be persisting in your file storage. You need you need the key and the value. But it's saying that you have to pass it over here as name is equal to CS3. So you see that you need to get your pen and paper and draft out your plan, whiteboard stuff down. So for us to get this done, we have to take it step after another. So what can we actually do? Let's first of all come over to our console and try to understand things over here. Then remember that if the class doesn't exist, it just gives us class doesn't exist. So what we have to do, let's just comment all of these out first off, and let's print Let's print args. And by the way, if you don't know how this def do create actually work, like how this CMD model actually work, I have a full complete course explaining even the internal workings of how the CMD model tends to determine that this do underscore is actually a command to execute. I have a full course on that. You should go check it out. So over here, let's first of all print this args. I even went ahead in the video to explaining why you need an extra parameter in your function. So let's just print this args and even see what this args is all about, right? So let's come over here and do console, and we do create base model. So can you see this base model is actually the args, and this is just the command, which is actually coming from this create, this do underscore create. It does make sense. So if I go ahead and do name is equal to Kelly, age is equal to 10. So can you see that the base model, the name and name equal to Kelly, age equal to 10 are what are all args, right? So having that in mind, how then can you determine that the first command is what is the name of the class that the user wants to create? Can you tell me? This is where what? This is where we need logic. So first thing that you can actually do is what? You need to be smart. You need to think, these args over here, are they what? Are they represented as string or are they represented as list? So what you can basically do is you can say, okay, you know what? Let's check the type. Let's check the type of these args. Let's first of all see how this args is being represented. So we could do what? Create base model name Kelly. So I just have to copy this because we'll be doing it a lot. Wow, that means this args is represented as string. Valid what? Valid hint. Thank you, my dear friend, which is the type, for giving me a nice hint that what? That this args is represented as what? As a string. So if this args is represented as a string, and right now I want to what? I want to get this first what? This first boy over here as what? As the name of the what? Of the object that you want to create. What can I do? I can start thinking, is there any string method that can help us what? That can help us get all of these commands one after the other. You can go to Google and do what? And search. Maybe let's go to Google and say any Python string method that can help us split strings. And it says the split method. Oh, seems like we have a method. It says the split method splits a string into a list. You can specify the separator, default, blah, blah, blah. And let's see how the split method works. And this is how the split method works. It says string and this. It has a separator, so which means max split optional. Okay. So that means we can actually split by anything we want to split with, right? And valid. I think we got something over here. So right now, what happens is we want to split with a white space. That's what our split is over here. We want to split with a white space. Let's split with what white spaces and see what it results to. So what we can actually do is we can say what? We can say giving coming up with variable names as well, like my nightmare. I don't know, but let's call this maybe. So let me just call this arg and call this args. So like the plural and call this args. Then I can do arg dot split. So I want to split it white space, and this is actually representation of white space. Then I can do print args, and let's see what is going to result to. Amazing. Seems like we have something over here, because right now we now have the base model as a first parameter as a first element in the array, and this and every other guy coming as what are the second parameter. I think we are one step ahead. So what can we actually now do? We can now see, since that is the case, that means every first element in the array or in the list, because this is Python, is actually the name of the class that you want to create. Valid. So with that means we can actually do something like if args at index 0 in self dot classes print yes, else print nothing over there, man. Let's see. Args at index 0 in self.classes. This is self.classes over here. So we are checking this. That's what we're checking, right? So right now we could exit and oh, what happened? And it says what? Yes. That means this base model is actually over there. So if the element at index 0 is in self.classes, what does that entail? It entails that what? We can go ahead to create the object. Makes sense, right? One more consideration over here. What is the consideration? We also need to consider when the user does something just like this. We need to respond the user with an answer, right? And what is the answer? Alex said we should tell the user class name missing. And how can we determine that? We can determine that by just saying what if not ask. And what does that mean? It means if there is nothing passed as the argument, which is the ask, just what? Just echo creates class name missing. We need the class name, right? So that means before we can actually check if there is an ask 0, we need to what? We need to check for this. So now, if we now go over here and do this, and we do create, it just echoes this ask. And what happened? Oh, sorry, this should be ag. Yeah, not ask. And we do create. And it says what? Class name missing. Is it making sense? So first what? First consideration, which is what? To check if the class name is missing. And we've done that. The second one is to what? Is to respond the user with what? With the prompt. When what? When the ask at index 0 is not what? Is not in our available models. So what did they say we should respond the user with? We should respond the user with class doesn't exist. So instead of this nothing over there, man, we just respond with class doesn't exist. And let's see. Right now, if we do create something like create book, it says what? Class doesn't exist. Then if the class exists, we just have to print this. Right now, we have to return. So we're returning so that it does not continue executing other commands that's beneath the print class doesn't exist. Makes sense, right? Now we now have a basic what? A basic schema of what? Of our create. Maybe let me call it a schema, right? Because now this create is actually in check. We just have to what now keep improving the create to our desired what create command. So, but before we go ahead and instantiate the object or the desired object from the user, I want to teach you how we can what dynamically create an object. I know you might be wondering, why do we have to map these classes over here? And that is what I want to now what teach you. So just in case you're not aware of what dynamically what creating an object. So what we can actually do is let's just copy this first guy over here and come to our test file. And right now, this is how our test file works. Let's just, try to run our test file and do file. It just creates a new instance and just executes it, right? So now, let me show you something. So now, if I paste these classes over here and, try to format it real quick. And now, this is just the base model class. What is this? You might be wondering. So this is nothing but what? But we assigning what? Assigning this base model that we imported as what? As a value of a key, basically. So this is just like you doing, okay, you know what? Let's take this base model off. And over here, let's do name is equal to what? Kelly. And age is equal to what? Is equal to this. And right now, if we do print classes and we say print classes name, very, very foolish something that I want to do now. What is it going to give us? It's going to give us Kelly, obviously. And I know you might be like, who doesn't know that? If we want to print the value or get the value of what? Of a dictionary, we just have to access the key, and which is this key. That's same thing. If we also come over here and do base model as what? As the key, and pass this as what? And pass this object. Watch over here. We are not putting the parenthesis over here. We're just passing the object. What do you think will happen? If we print it and just access what? And access what? And access the base model what? The base model key, what do you think will happen? And let's print. It gives us what? It gives us the class itself. So this is the class. So this is class models or base model. So this is the class itself. This is the class of what? Base model that we are accessing using this class with the square brace and base model, which is over here. This is the same thing as what? As we commenting all of this out and printing what? Base model, which is this base model that we imported over here. And if we print it now, it's what is class-based model. If we uncomment this out and comment this out also, this one class-based model, class-based model. This is coming from this and this is coming from this that we imported. It does make sense, right? So that's to show you that what we are just mapping it inside of here because we need a way to dynamically create it when the user should do something like create base model. So if we now get this base model, which is over here, that we got it as what? As args at index 0, we now take in self.classes, which is what? Self.classes is this over here. We are taking, is this command, which is this base model, in this dictionary? And if it is, we are what? We're going to dynamically create this base model. And over here, how do we dynamically create this base model? So knowing that the value of this key over here is actually what? Is actually the class itself. And if you want to create an instance from a class, what do you have to do? You just have to call the class name. So basically, if you have something like class user, and you want to create what? And you want to create an instance from this user, what do you have to do? You just have to do something like user1 is equal to user. Basically. So knowing that, what can we now do in this our own scenario? We just have to do what? We just have to say something like model is equal to classes and what? And call the base model. And right now, if we do what? If we do print model, right? Basically, and if we come over here and we run again, it's still giving us what? Models.base model, base model. Obviously, so what can we now do? Since now we have not gotten the class itself, now we're not having access to the class, we could now go ahead and do what? And do something like mod instance is equal to what? Model, and instantiate it, obviously, because this is just having just the class itself. And doing this now, we now do what? We now trigger the instantiation of what? Of the model, which is what? Which is this model over here. And right now, if we print, we now expect to see what? To see the object created, the instance created itself. So now we now have what? We now have a base model instance dynamically created from this base model. It does make sense. First of all, we got the actual class from the word, from the dictionary. We now instantiated the actual class and printed it. That's basically what we are doing over there. That's why we are mapping it over here. There are a lot of ways. I'm teaching you this so that you know that all of these are just what? Ways that we came up to do ourselves. You can literally do it any way you want to do it. I mean, you can use like a list to map the base model. You can actually access it from the globals, the Python globals. I can do something like this, print globals. And let me show you. And watch over here, you're going to see what? You're going to see base model. Look at it. This is the base model. I can instantiate this from the base model, from the globals. Honestly, I can do that. But the thing is that it's not advisable to tamper with with your globals dictionary. It's not advisable. I mean, if you want to iterate over this global dictionary, it's going to tell you that it's not allowed. But the only thing you can do is that you can get a shallow copy, making use of what? .copy to get a shallow copy of it and work with it. Nobody is stopping you from doing that. So I'm trying to teach you this so that you know that there is no fixed pattern of doing this. This is what I came up with, and maybe with what some other developers came up with. You can think outside of the box. I mean, right now, this is the same thing. Look at this key is the base model and class base model over here. So I mean, I can literally do something like this. I can literally do something like print globals and pass this and do what? And do base model. Watch, it's going to spawn up what? An instance of base model. What am I doing? I'm getting the dictionary and I'm passing base model as the key. And let me show you. I commented everything out, right? So can you see? It now has what? It now has what? The class of what? Of base model. From what? From the globals. What can I do again? I can now go ahead and pass this over here. And what will happen? It will spawn up what? The base model instance. You see? From the what? From the globals of our what? Python dictionary. So I'm trying to teach you all of this so that you know there is no fixed way of doing it. Don't think that because we map this over here, that's the only way you can do it. Nah, that's not the only way. You see, I dynamically created an instance of base model from the globals dictionary. And I mean, I can implement this legitimately in my application, just that it's not advisable. But even if it's not advisable, I can get a shallow copy of it by doing .copy and get a shallow copy of it. So can you see? We dynamically what created a base model from what? From the globus, from the Python's globus. It does make sense. So over here now, because this is just what a handful by what? Doing this, getting the class name, instantiating, what can we do? Python gave us a syntactic sugar by what? By just adding the parenthesis over here. So adding this parenthesis will dynamically invoke what? Invoke the class or create an object for us or an instance. So we can now take off this extra line. And right now we could just print model. And what? We'll get an instance of what? An instance of the base model. Can you see? So no need of what? Adding an extra variable. So this is what? This is just a syntactic sugar. It does make sense. So that's basically what we are doing over here. I need you to think outside of the box. Think outside of the box. Not that you are watching me means that this is a rigid pattern of doing it. Nah, it's not a rigid pattern. This is just what I, as a developer, came up with. I'm teaching you so that you can think outside of the box. How am I going to do this myself? Not what the tutor taught me, or not what I was watching hours on YouTube. That's why I've shown you literal many ways you can achieve same result. You can do this with a list. When we start working with SQL Alchemy, you're going to see where we also implemented a list. We map these classes inside of a list. And why did we choose list? Because list is the most efficient way of doing it. You're going to see it during the days of SQL Alchemy. So do what? Stay tuned. It does make sense, right? So right now, let's go back to what we were console and dynamically what create an instance. Now that this is clear. So welcome back to the console. Let's continue what the improvement. So now that we want to create, we dynamically create what creates the user or create the object. Can you now tell me how to do this? Tell me yourself. I need you to tell me from what we learned in the test file. So what can we now do? We need to what? We need that when the user does dot and dot base model, regardless of any model the user passed, we want to what dynamically create it. So what can we now do? Basically, we could just basically come over here and say what? And say model is equal to self dot classes, which is this classes over here. And we want to pass what? The args at index 0. And we could just do print model. Right? Let's see. We could just do create base model. Let me just copy this, sorry. And yeah, it gives us what the class address. And what can we now do? Add our syntactic sugar by what? Invoking, by adding this parenthesis to invoke what? An instance. And basically, that's all we have to do. And right now, if we do this, it creates what? It creates a base model instance. Clap for yourself. You see, we've dynamically created a base model instance, and right now this is pretty efficient. We could now what? We could now create any other class that exists. So class user actually exists over here because we mapped it over here. And what? It created a class of user. It does make sense, right? So this is how we dynamically create an object by mapping it what? Inside of a dictionary. So I think the first feature implemented, or not like implemented because we just re-implemented a feature, and I did that so that I can literally teach you what is actually going on behind the scene. So the next thing is for us to improve our console to accept what? To accept parameters. Is that clear? Welcome back. So right now we want to continue our console improvement because that's why we're here, right? So we want our console to accept parameter, our create command to accept parameter. And what does that mean? So right now we can basically just do something like this, create base model, and it just creates the base model for us. But we want to do this so that we want to improve our console so that it can accept parameters. And what does this mean? It means that this name and this value is going to be set as what? As an attribute of this base model. Right now, the only attribute of this base model is the ID and the created at and the updated at, which is the attribute, or which are the attributes coming from here, right? But now we want to dynamically set attributes on them from our terminal. And now if we hit enter, it's gonna work. But if we check the output, you can see that this name and value as Kelly is not inside of the base model, right? So right now it's not working. So we need to we need to improve the console. So now how can we do that? It's literally very, very easy. So what can we do is that we know that first of all, let's comment all of these out and see what the ask is again, right? So right now, if we do this again, so I have to take this off and print again. So now we can see that this is what name Kelly. So what we needed is the args and not this. I think let me just take this off. So I need the args. So we could see it as a list. So right now we can see that aside from element at index 0, every other thing from here is what is the args, is what is the attribute and the value that we want to set on our object. So what we can actually do is very, very simple. So knowing that, what can we do? For us to get access to these guys, what can we do? We can iterate inside of it because it's a list, right? So we can basically say for, what can I call it now? For, I don't know the name. Oh my God. So this is the hardest part of, teaching. So you know what we can actually do? So let's call this line, because line is actually what it's actually called in the CMD model. So let's call this line and call this arg at index 0, args at index 0. So then over here we can now say for arg in args. Yes, I think this should be a pretty name. So for arg in args, then we can do what? We can print arg, right? So right now we could just do this and do create base model. And yeah, so this is the base, these are the args. So we just iterated and got it one after the other, right? So what we can actually do now is we can now start thinking of what, how then are we going to determine that this first one is the name and this second one is the value, even with this equal to. Are you getting the drill? Because we need to make this the what? The attribute, and make this the what? The value. So what I mean, we need to what? We need that when we want to persist the object, we need that it should be persisted something like this. Name is equal to Kelly. Right? So this is what we want to achieve. This is what we want to achieve. And what our subsequent attribute and value. So how can we now what? How can we now achieve something like that, right? So we could basically come over here and start thinking. So since these are just literal strings, because they are saved as strings. So knowing that these are literal strings, what is the first thing that should come to your mind when you want to get this as the name and get this as the value? Tell me. Our dear friend, the split method, right? The split method, because that's what we use when we wanted to what, differentiate or like get them in separate form like this. So now we want to split. On what condition are we going to split? We're going to split on the condition of what, on this equal to. So we are saying what, split the remaining args whenever you see an equal to. So once you split it, we're going to get this first one as the what, as the attribute, and the second one as the what, as the value. It does make sense. So let's implement that feature. So we could come over here and say what, and say attribute and what, and value is equal to arg dot split, right? And what condition do we want to split? We want to split with what? We want to split on equal to. Then right now we could just basically do print. This is the attribute, and pass attribute, copy this and say this is value. Over here we say value. Right now let's print and see. Ctrl C, and we can do run, and what happened? We got an error. So value error, not enough values to unpack. So attribute value args dot split expected to go 1. So what is the problem over here? So attribute value args dot split value. Okay. Do you know what the problem is? So the problem is because it tries to split this base model, but it's not able to locate anything like equal to, right? Because we're just saying iterate inside of the args, which is the args over here, and split it whenever you see an equal to. And right now it does not see any equal to in the first index, so it raises an error and says cannot unpack it, right? Expected to go 1. So how can we fix it? So we actually have maybe like 2 fix for this. But the first fix that might come to your mind is to first of all check if there is equal to in the arg, right? That's the only time I want you to split, right? So that way it will not try to split what? It's not going to try to split the base model, right? So it's not going to try to split the first index. So let's try and do it again, and now it worked perfectly fine. And another way is you can actually start your iteration from 1. So this means what? Start your iteration from this boy. So index 1, ignore this first index, which is index 0. But let's just go with our first check because I think this is more efficient. So right now you can now see that this is the attribute, which is the name over here, and the value is now Kelly. Can you see? We are now able to get the attribute and the name. It does make the attribute and the value. It does make sense. So now we are able to hold the attribute and the value. So the main question now is how then are we going to set it to what? To this class that we created over here. That is what? That is the main challenge, right? So for you to understand what we are going to do over here, I need to first of all teach you how we can dynamically set an object, set an attribute on an object. So for that reason, let's go to our test file. So welcome to our test file, right? So right now, let's just comment this out and, just start with this class user. So I wanted to show you something before we can actually start dynamically setting the attribute on the main console application. So over here, we have the class user, right? And let's just call our init method, right? We say underscore init. And right now, let's say self dot name is equal to Kelly. And let's just instantiate this by saying user1 is equal to user, and let's print user1 dot name, right? So let's just print the user1 dot name, and it gives us what? It gives us Kelly. Makes sense? Right now, let's just print user1 dot age, which is not over here. We only have self dot name and Kelly, and right now we're trying to print user1 dot age. Let's see what it's going to give us. And it says user object has no attributes, age. And I know that this might be crazy for you. You'll be like, you did not set any attribute like age. So why did I try to access age over here? So stay calm. I did this so that I can actually teach you how we can dynamically set an attribute on our objects. And why did we need something like this? So we need something like this. There might be a scenario where you need the presence of an attribute in your class, but you might need the attribute if some certain condition are met or something. So you might need to set it during runtime. So for that reason, you might need to use a method called what? A method called setAttrib. And right now, this method receives 3 parameters or 3 arguments, which is what? Which is the instance or the object that you want to set the attribute to. First, and the second one should be what? Should be the name of the attribute. And right now it's what? Age. Another one is what? Another one is going to be what? The value of the attribute. And this is it. So we are saying set an attribute age with a value of 10 to this user1. And right now, if we try to print again, do you think it's going to give us error? And now it did not give us error. Right now we've got 10. Even though we didn't explicitly set. Oh god. Even though we didn't explicitly set the attribute of age over here, it just what? It got it from us. So this is what? How we can dynamically set attribute on an object. So with this now, is something clicking in your brain right now? We can use this approach to dynamically set these attributes on this model. Makes sense, right? Are you following? So that's the thing. So I needed to point something out real quick. So this approach that we want to use now is relatively easy. And if you remember, while I was teaching this video, I said, let's go get over to the test file. I wanted to teach you a very complicated way that I did it during my own days. But when I wanted to start the video, I thought of something. There is actually a simpler approach to this. And what is a simpler approach? The simpler approach is making use of the set attribute. During my days, I implemented it using some complex logic. So I said, why not teach about the simpler logic? And I remember that when I tried to implement it like this during my own days, it failed. I tried like a couple of days and I wasn't able to fix the error. We just said, oh, you know what, let's just go with the hard way. And the hard way also took me like a couple of days to come up with the logic. And ALX, I kept trying till I got every check green. But the thing that I want to point out here is that now I went back to my intranet. I just got my intranet, and I tried using this method to dynamically set attributes on the models, and it failed. I tried, and it failed. Guess what? It took me randomly, say 30 to 40, 50 minutes, and I fixed it. And this set attribute just worked. And I checked my intranet, and everything got checked. And right now it's 2 o'clock a.m. from my end, which is like midnight. For some others, for so many people, you might be sleeping by now. But I'm just awake trying to just complete this video because I got a lot of requests from audience, and a lot of people that I knew in ALX reached out to me just crying for help for the video, and I decided to just complete the video. So what I'm trying to say is that don't force things. Your knowledge grows as you grow. So right now I was able to fix a bug that took me a couple of weeks, and I wasn't even able to fix it then within a short period of time, which probably like 30 to 40 minutes, and I got it to work. So most times it will be very, very difficult for you, but just move on, leave it. Find something else to do. If it doesn't work now, just continue going. At some point, your knowledge is going to grow so well that once you look at a problem, you're like, oh, this is a simple thing, and you just fix it. Is that clear? So don't force things. If you're not getting it now, just leave it, continue going. Work hard, believe in God, one day it's going to make sense. Is it clear? So let's get back to the video. So with that in mind, what can we now do? We could basically just come over here and call what? And call the set attribute. On what object are we trying to set the attribute on? This object that we created over here, right? So we could just say model. And what is the attribute and the value? This attribute and the value, that's what we want to set. So we could call the attribute and we could call the value. And that's basically all we have to do. So let's just print this model, and let's take this model and also print over here so we can visualize what actually happened. Can you see? So we are printing the first model just before we set the attribute, and the second model just after we set the attribute. So let's see if there will be any change, right? So now we do .console and we do create base model name is equal to Kelly and age is equal to, okay, 10. And let's just copy, paste. So look at it. Look at the first model, which is this base model. You look at it stopped over here, which is the updated at time, right? And the second model, starting from this base model, has additional attributes in it, which is the name, Kelly, and the age of 10. So can you see that we have now dynamically set an attribute or attributes on this base model? It makes sense now. Right now we are what? We are done. We're good. Basically, we're good. This is the last step that we need to implement, or this is like it's not like the peak. Right now we have what? We have a functioning create command that receives input and executes it, and what creates a base model with parameters. So we're good right now. I mean, that's everything we need to know. So what is the next step after creating this base model? We now need to persist it in our file storage. Because right now it's not in our file storage. Look at, it's not in our file storage. So how then can we do that? We could basically just come over here and say model dots. And now watch when I did dots, it did not give us any suggestion. So if we want to get the suggestion, that means if we want to get the attributes of this model, we have to just do what is called type annotation or type hint, whichever you want to call it. Let me say base model. So if you don't know what the type annotation is, just Google it and see what I did over here. So this will just help, code completion, code suggestion, and all of that. So right now, if I now do dots, can you see it now suggests all of the attributes of this model? So that means I now know that this model has an attribute of save, which is this save coming from this base model over here. Look at it. And now I can just do what? I can just save it. So right now, if we try to create what? If we try to create it again, paste, and right now we now have it load. So these are the attributes, right? So let's go to our file storage and check if it persisted with the attributes. And perfect. It did persist it with what? With the attributes. Look at the attribute name and Kelly. Look at the age and 10. Look at over here. It does make sense. It does make sense, right? So what we can actually do right now is we have to just delete or just take off all these because it's not required from ALX. ALX said we should just return the ID, and you should put all this in consideration because they're also checking your output. If your output does not match the output, you're not going to get the checks, right? So we just have to take that off and print. So right now this is the expected output. And right now we're done with what? With this create command. You can go pattern now. I'm joking, you are not done. You know why? Because you have to handle some edge cases. And that's how you fail in ALX, because ALX will test your code for edge cases. But the thing is, right now you have to rejoice. Why? Because first thing a developer does is to what? Is to write the minimal code to pass the test. So writing the minimal code, you don't have to handle edge cases. Just write the best minimal case, minimal code to pass the test. And right now we've written the best minimal code to pass our test, which is what? Which is receiving parameters and persisting the parameters in our file storage. But there are a couple of edge cases that we need to handle. Let me show you one edge case. So one edge case is, for instance, this our name has an underscore over here. What do you think will happen when we hit enter? It created, right? Now if we go to our file storage, can you see? It created it with what? With the underscore. Remember that ALX said that any underscore should be what? Should be removed from what? From the value before persisting inside of what? Inside of the file storage. So that's the case. So I can actually show you where they say this. So they said all underscores must be replaced by spaces. Example, you want to set the string my little house to the attribute name. Your command line must be this my little house. Look, it had underscore. But in the file storage, they took off the underscore. Look at, there's no underscore over here, right? So this is one out of millions of edge cases that you need to handle in your code. In just this create command, you have to think, what are the edge cases that I need to make sure does not break my code? That's what makes you a better developer. It does make sense, right? That's even the major reason why you need to write a test. But these tests, these edge cases are way simple and way obvious for you to make sure you handle them even without a test, right? So if you really want to see how we can handle the edge cases and also learn more about it, I think we should catch ourselves in the should this be later video in the next video. Okay? So let's delve straight into what? Into handling edge cases. And one of the edge cases I want to handle right now is what? Is making sure that this underscore doesn't get into our way when we want to persist the objects in our database, right? So how can we do that? We could basically check if the underscore is in what? Is in the value, right? What can we do? We could say value is equal to, we need to call a method. You can check, you can make use of Google to determine something like this, just in case you don't know, but I know a method that can help us to replace something in string. So what can we do? We could say value dot replace, and what do we want to replace? We want to replace any underscore with what? With a white space, right? And this is just all we need to do. And right now, if we try to run our code again and maybe do something like this again, and maybe let me do CS free. Perfect, it's created. So let's check our file storage. And right now, can you see the underscore is no longer there? We are what? We are now able to what? Persist it into our database with the exception of what? The underscore. So look at over here, the underscore was out before we persisted it in our database, which makes sense. So what again is, what other edge case can we handle? I don't know, you have to check. You have to keep looking at your files. What other edge case? Okay, I see another edge case. So over here in the name, look at this name has double quotes in it. Look at it has a single quote and a double quote. This should not be so. You should only have one quote, which is the outer quote, which is the double quote. So you need to also handle this edge case. So how can you do that? You could come over here and say what? And say, I don't think you should do an if for this. You could basically just say value.strip. There's a method called strip. And what do you want to strip? You want to strip off every single what? Every single quotation. Is this called quotation? I think it's called apostrophe. So I don't even know. But this boy over here that has just one mark in it, you just want to strip it out of the what? Out of the value and assign it back to the value. Right? So right now, if we try again and take this out and try running our code again and do this Kelly, and we save, we get back to over here. So can you see it's now gone from our database? But how about the user does something like this? Let's see if we should handle that. And right now it's included what? It's included the quotation, but it's now included slashes, right? So this is also an edge case that we need to handle. So how can we handle this edge case now? So how can we handle this edge case? So we need to handle it maybe just doing something like value is equal to value dot strip. So now we want to also strip this, right? So right now, let's run again and see what is going to be this output. Let's check our file storage, and yeah, we're good. So those slashes are now gone because what we strip them off over here. It does make sense. So these edge cases might be plenty. Another edge case that I will have to introduce to you. So the thing is that you don't actually need to do like a check, maybe like doing like if this then strip. Now this strip does not do anything if it does not see anything like what you said it should strip. It just like ignores it and move on, right? I hope I'm correct with that statement. Then aside from that, I think we're good right now. So these are the edge cases that I can actually see at this instance. You might want to make sure you verify your code so well. So run the code a couple of times, check for every single edge case that might come to your brain, and make sure you validate every single edge case, and make sure your code is robust before actually committing and pushing to GitHub. Then aside from that, that's everything you need to know about this create command. It was a long journey with you guys, and I really appreciate your time and your stay to enjoy and learn from this wonderful series. And if you can actually see my time, this is like 2:53 a.m., which is Friday, 21st of June, which is the day you actually have this project, right? And that's the day I'm creating the series. But I'm doing it because I actually promised myself to be part of you guys' journey and try to make life a bit easier for you people, because I love you and I want you to have a great career. So that's why we're putting in a lot of effort, regardless. So I'm going to record this video today, edit it today, and make it live today. So that's why I'm, recording it till this midnight long. So just in case you find the video helpful, remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, do the best you can to support the channel, and remain blessed, work hard, believe God, and trust the process. That's all I have to tell you guys. Safe. So I just needed to point it out, right? So I just needed to point it out. In the next video, we will be working on MySQL, setting up a server and also a test server for the tests. And aside from that, we're basically good, right? So trust God, trust the process, and work hard. Makes sense, right? Peace and love. Catch you in the next video.